Hola a todos and welcome to online class. Hoy vamos a practicar el verbo ir y los verbos con cambio en la raíz. So first let's start with el verbo ir. This verb means to go in English, and it's an irregular verb. So quickly let's review. What is an irregular verb? An irregular verb is a verb that doesn't follow the conjugation pattern for normal AR, ER, and IR verbs in Spanish. So that means you will have to memorize the 6 forms of this verb. And here they are. Voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. Now it's your chance to give it a try. Inténtalo. What form of the verb ir would you use for each of the subjects listed here? Yo, nosotros, ustedes, vosotros, ellas, Paco, mi amigo y yo. You can pause the video here, and once you've figured out which form of the verb you would use for each subject, go ahead and hit play and you'll see the answers. And here are the answers. Respuestas. Yo voy, nosotros vamos, ustedes van, vosotros vais, ellas van, Paco va, mi amigo y yo vamos. Now let's talk about the different uses of the verb ir. The first use is destination, and the formula is ir plus a plus place. So when you ask a question about destination, you would say a dónde, the correct form of ir, and the subject. To answer that question, you would use the subject, the correct form of ir, a, and the place. Keep in mind that if you have the combination a plus el, the word the, it becomes al. For example, voy al gimnasio. The second use of ir is future, and the formula is ir plus a plus an infinitive. So for example, voy a estudiar. I'm going to study in the future. And the third use is something we call let's, and the formula is vamos a infinitive. And in this case, you want to be sure to use the correct tone in your voice. So for example, vamos a estudiar would mean we are going to study in the future. But if you say, vamos a estudiar, that would mean let's study. And it's simply the tone of your voice that makes that difference. So now it's your chance to give it a try. Inténtalo. ¿Cómo se dice? I'm going to study tonight. She is going to the library. We are going to the movies, and let's dance. You can pause the video here, figure out how you would say each phrase in Spanish, then go ahead and hit play and you'll see the answers. And here are the answers. Respuestas. Voy a estudiar esta noche. I'm going to study tonight. This is a future example. Ella va a la biblioteca. She is going to the library. This is an example of destination. Vamos a ir al cine. We are going to go to the movies. This is an example that actually combines the future, vamos a ir, and destination, al cine. Vamos a bailar. This is the example of let's dance. Now we can move on to the present tense of stem changing verbs. First, we need to talk about what is a stem change. We've talked a lot about changing the endings of verbs to make them agree with their subject, but typically we don't do anything with the stem of the verb, which is the beginning of the verb before the ending. But with stem changing verbs, there is actually a change in the stem, and we still change the endings to agree with the subject of the sentence. So what is a stem change? It is when the last vowel of the verb stem changes spelling. And there are 3 types. One is where the E in the last vowel of the stem changes to an IE. Another type is when the O changes to a UE. And finally, when E changes to I. So how do you know which verbs have a stem change? Is there some way to look at them and know they have a stem change? Or how do you know what type of stem change a particular verb has? Basically, in this case, you will need to memorize which verbs have a stem change and which stem change they have. So how do we conjugate stem changing verbs then? Well, as usual, we drop the AR, ER, and IR and add the appropriate ending, as we've been doing for a while now with regular AR, ER, and IR verbs. But then we also need to change the spelling of the stem in all forms except nosotros and vosotros. So let's look at a couple of examples. Here's an example from group 1. These are the verbs that change E to IE in the stem, like cerrar. If you look at the forms, yo cierro, tú cierras, él, ella, usted cierra, nosotros, nosotras cerramos, vosotros, vosotras cerráis, ellos, ellas, ustedes cierran. Notice that there's a spelling change in the stem in all the forms except for nosotros and vosotros. But the endings, o, as, a, amos, ais, an, are the normal AR verb endings. Here's an example from group 2. These are the verbs that change O to UE. Poder. Yo puedo, tú puedes, él, ella, usted puede, nosotros, nosotras podemos, vosotros, vosotras podéis, ellos, ellas, ustedes pueden. And again, you'll see the stem change happens in all forms except for nosotros and vosotros. But the endings are regular ER verb endings, o, ese, hemos, es, en. And one more example from group 3. These are the verbs that change E to I in the stem. Yo pido, tú pides, él, ella, usted pide, nosotros, nosotras pedimos, vosotros, vosotras pedís, ellos, ellas, ustedes piden. And again, you'll see this spelling change in the stem in all the forms except for nosotros and vosotros. And the endings are once again the regular endings for IR verbs, o, ese, imos, is, en. There are a few special cases with stem changing verbs. The first one is jugar. Jugar is a verb that changes U to UE instead of O to UE. The second special case is decir, seguir, conseguir. These three verbs have an irregular yo form. Digo, sigo, consigo. But the rest of the forms are conjugated with the pattern that we've just seen for stem changing verbs. Jugar is also a special case because we put an a after it when it's followed by a sport. So for example, jugar al fútbol. Notice that the a, el becomes al. Jugar al fútbol. Comenzar and empezar are special because they can be followed by a and an infinitive, meaning to beginning to do something. So you can say empiezo a estudiar. Pensar is another special case because it can either be followed by an infinitive, which means planning to do something. Pienso estudiar, I plan to study. Or it can be followed by en, to think about something. Pensar en. Here are a few examples of stem changing verbs. Ana cierra la puerta. In this case, you can see that the form of the verb has a spelling change in the stem. The ending is a normal ending for an AR verb. Ustedes quieren dormir. Here we have two verbs, and remember that when we have two verbs like that right next to each other, the first one is conjugated and the second one stays in the infinitive. Tú piensas jugar al baloncesto. Here is the special case jugar, followed by a, and then el, al baloncesto. Nosotros empezamos a estudiar. This is another special case where we're using the a and the infinitive after the verb empezar. Now it's your chance to give it a try. Inténtalo. ¿Cómo se dice? I can sing well. We don't want to return the book. They are playing soccer, and you and your brother tell the truth. You can pause the video here, try to figure out how you would say each sentence in Spanish, then go ahead and hit play and you'll see the answers. And here are the answers. Respuestas. Puedo cantar bien. I can sing well. No queremos devolver el libro. We don't want to return the book. Ellos juegan al fútbol. They are playing soccer. Tú y tu hermano dicen la verdad. You and your brother tell the truth. Preguntas? Do you have any questions? Certainly feel free to send me an email if you do. I'm always happy to help. Hasta luego.